Welcome back to Dieu Han's channel. Wishing everyone a peaceful and happy new day. However, Han's turbulent days were far from over. Her small house was still unfinished when little Tom had to be hospitalized. Amidst these overwhelming difficulties, Han was fortunate to receive the heartfelt help of the landlord and his son, Thon. Thanks to their care and support, the burden on Han's shoulders was somewhat lightened. After a few days of treatment, thanks to the doctor's attentive care, Tom's health stabilized, and today he was discharged from the hospital. Leaving the hospital, Han's first action was to pick up Quinn from Uncle Kwa's house, a person Han deeply grateful to. The three of them returned to their simple little house. The trees around the house had been neatly tidied and carefully tended to during Han's absence. Today, the house no longer felt cold and desolate, but seemed warmer, radiating the warmth of human kindness and sharing. A new day began for Han. She followed the familiar dirt road, leaving her small house to take little Quinn to school. On the way, Han stopped by to visit Uncle Kwa. Everyone was happy today, glad that Uncle Kwa had recovered and little Tom had fully recovered. Because she had to take Quinn to school and also earn some extra income to make ends meet, Han asked Uncle Kwa to look after Tom. Hearing this, Uncle Kwa was very happy and readily agreed. Looking at Uncle Kwa and little Tom, Han's heart ached with emotion at his kindness. Leaving Uncle Kwa's house, Han took Quinn to school. She told her daughter to be good and study hard, then hurried off to attend to her work for the day. Han's heart was always filled with worry about little Tom at Uncle Kwa's house, but she trusted that Uncle Kwa would take good care of him like a family member. Throughout her commute to work, Han couldn't stop thinking about the kindness that Uncle Kwa had shown her and her mother. She told herself that one day, when life was better, she would definitely repay this deep debt of gratitude. Fortunately, after dropping little Quinn off at school, Han turned around and met Dan standing by the roadside. Seeing that Han hadn't been around for several days, Dan was a little curious and worried, but he didn't dare ask too many questions, as there was no special relationship between them. Even so, as a kind-hearted police officer, Dan had always silently helped Han without asking for anything in return. Standing by the roadside after a few hurried words, Dan learned that Han was looking for work. Han said she had planned to go to the forest to cut bananas to sell, but after the heavy rain, the forest road was slippery and very dangerous. Hearing this, Dan suddenly remembered that he was also going to tap rubber trees in his family's plantation that day and was short of workers. He immediately offered to take Han along. Touched by Dan's kindness and help over the past time, Han could only nod in agreement. After walking a short distance, the old rubber plantation came into view. For the locals, rubber trees were the main source of income, thanks to the tapping of latex, and they were well suited to the region's climate. The plantation was vast, and besides Han and Dan, there were two other people working there. However, unexpectedly, as soon as Han appeared, the other woman showed displeasure. Her gaze was full of annoyance, making Han feel flustered, wondering what she had done to displease her. Because she had never tapped rubber before, Han was completely at a loss, not knowing where to begin. Seeing this, Dan patiently stood beside her, guiding her step by step. At times, to show her the correct technique, he had to hold Han's hand, adjusting each stroke of the knife. This unexpected closeness made Han blush, feeling both embarrassed and flustered. But all those small gestures did not escape the notice of the strange woman. From behind a distant tree, she silently observed every action of Han and Dan falling into her eyes. A nameless feeling of unease arose in her heart. It turned out that from their first meeting, she had harbored a dark plan. This scheme grew larger and larger because she had secretly liked Dan for a long time. Now, seeing Dan paying more attention to Han, her jealousy flared up even more intensely. She didn't know that all Han wanted was a peaceful life, a job to support her child. However, since Han appeared, all eyes in the rubber plantation seemed to be on her. Even the hired man showed interest. From afar, Han and Dan were inseparable, further fueling her anger. She secretly vowed to find a way to drive Han away. The further away from Dan, the better. The whole group worked diligently until the end of the day. The buckets of rubber latex were full, lined up ready to be sold. Seeing her opportunity, while carrying a heavy bucket of latex, she deliberately bumped into Han, causing her to lose her balance and fall to the ground. The loud noise startled Dan, who turned around. Seeing Han lying on the ground, he rushed to help her up, anxiously asking how she was. This scene only added fuel to the fire, making her even more furious. Without saying another word, Don quickly loaded the buckets of rubber latex onto his motorbike to deliver them, with Han sitting silently behind him. The motorbike disappeared down the dirt road, leaving her standing alone under the desolate trees, her anger surging within her. After selling the buckets of rubber latex, the fruits of everyone's labor, Dan took Han to pick up little Quinn. After picking up their daughter, the two of them returned to Uncle Kwa's house to pick up little Tom. Just before noon, Uncle Koa had prepared a lavish meal. Even more coincidentally, Uncle Kwang, Uncle Koa's husband, had just returned home, and he was Dan's superior. So everyone gathered around the table, chatting and laughing like a real family. During the meal, Han sat quietly, watching each person, listening to their simple stories and warm laughter. Her heart ached. It had been a long time since Han had felt such a sense of togetherness. No more worries, no more fears, only the warmth of human connection spreading throughout the small house. Han bowed her head, hiding her teary eyes. She knew that in her turbulent life, it was these simple moments that gave her the strength to keep going. There were no gifts like other children, but for little Quinn, the warm corn on the cob was enough to make her smile brightly. The mother and daughter sat by the fire, waiting for the corn to boil. The smoke from the stove mingled with their clear laughter, making the small house feel unusually warm. Just as the corn was cooked, Don stopped by Hun's house. After work, he took the opportunity to visit Hun and check on her unfinished house. He asked a few questions, looked around at the roof and walls, and told Hun to let him know if there were any weak points so he could help fix them. Just as everyone was gathered around the basket of cooked corn, Dan's phone suddenly rang. On the other end was a colleague from his task force. After the call, Dan's face turned serious, and he turned to look at Hun. The news Hun had been longing for finally arrived. Her mother had been found. However, her mother was quite far from where Hun was currently staying. Without further hesitation, with Dan's help, Hun quickly prepared to leave. She ran over to leave little Quinn and little Tom with Miss. Men gave them a few instructions and then returned immediately. The sound of the motorbike engine roared, speeding along the muddy dirt roads. That ride carried not only Han, but also the sky of hope that was filling her heart at that moment. After a long journey, the small house finally came into view. But Hun suddenly stopped, her steps faltering. She stood still, hesitant to run inside. A vague fear welled up inside her. The fear that her stepfather would find out she was her mother's illegitimate child and disrupt the peaceful life her mother was enjoying. At that moment, Don stood beside her, gently encouraging her, his soft words soothing the turmoil in Hun's heart, preventing her from panicking at the prospect of reuniting with her mother after so many years. They stood at a distance, gazing towards the house. A moment later, Hun's mother's familiar figure appeared in the yard. Just seeing her mother, all her hesitation vanished. Unable to control her emotions, she cried out, "Mom!" and rushed towards her. Mother and daughter embraced, their arms wrapped tightly around each other, as if afraid that letting go would cause everything to disappear. Overwhelmed with happiness, tears streamed down her face, a mixture of joy and release from the pent-up longing Hun had felt for so long. Cruel fate had thrust Han into a difficult situation, forcing her to struggle daily for survival. Because of the need to earn a living and the endless worries, Hun hadn't had much time to show filial piety to her mother. Meanwhile, her mother had silently waited, growing older day by day, carrying with her the years of longing for her daughter's return to her loving embrace. Her mother smiled gently and invited Don and Hun into the house. With tears in her eyes, Hun introduced Don, the man who had helped her so much throughout her difficult journey. She said that it was thanks to Dan's dedication and kindness that they were able to have this precious reunion today. Her mother looked at Dan with gratitude, repeatedly thanking him for protecting her daughter. Her mother's illness had subsided, and her health was gradually stabilizing. Seeing her mother looking healthier and her voice more confident, Han felt a great weight lifted from her heart as if a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders. But their conversation was interrupted when the familiar sound of a motorbike approaching the yard echoed from afar. It was her stepfather, her mother's husband, who had returned. Han and Don jumped, quickly huddling behind each other, afraid that being discovered would put their mother in an awkward situation. The middle-aged man, with a dignified appearance, entered the yard. He attentively inquired about and cared for Han's mother in every way, from meals to her health. Standing behind them, Han saw everything. She realized that her stepfather wasn't a bad person. On the contrary, he loved and cared for her mother deeply. This both reassured Han and unsettled her. Knowing that staying any longer would surely lead to discovery, Han quietly told Dan to quickly go outside to get the gift bag she had prepared. Just as her stepfather went down to the kitchen to cook, Han silently approached, hugged her mother tightly, and whispered goodbye. Tears silently fell from both mother and daughter's eyes, but this time they were tears of hope. Dan turned around, and the two gently left, carrying with them a promise to visit their mother more often. Their mother watched them go, softly telling them that when the time was right, she would explain everything to her stepfather. She believed he wasn't a grumpy person and would understand and accept. Then, the two of them would be able to see each other openly, no longer having to sneak around like now.